March 10th for Denver Township. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll please stand and join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up is approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Support?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we passed unanimously. We'll use the agenda for this evening. Next up behind that is the declaration of any conflicts of interest. If any of the commissioners have a conflict of interest in any of the cases that will be heard this evening, please step forward at this time. Seeing none, we'll go to our first call to the public. This is a call to the public that has nothing to do with any of those items that are on the agenda tonight, but someone wants to speak on some other issue that's pertinent in the township. Come on up, right up to the podium.
Hi, good evening. Deborah Beatty, she knows me. I have a question about how to contact the Planning Commission members. And the agenda, let's say for this meeting, came out last Thursday evening, the packet and agenda. How would I get a message to Planning Commission members before this meeting tonight, if I wasn't able to make it and wanted to say something?
Amy, that would be addressed to you, wouldn't it?
Typically, yes, you would send the email to me.
Okay.
And then I would send it out to the planning commission.
Is there a deadline for that before they would get it?
Before the meeting, we have in our letter that is, you have until the 5 o'clock. And then if you send it to me.
5 o'clock tonight?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I get it late and I can't email it, I put hard copies.
Very
on the
good.
table
Okay.
for them.
Okay, that answers it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close the call to the public and start with the first open hearing. Number 1, consideration of an amendment to the Summerfield Point Plan Unit Development Agreement, final condominium site plan and environmental impact assessment to convert the project from a 140-unit attached condominiums to single-family detached homes, 108 of those. The project is located on Lawson Drive, north of Grand River Avenue. The request is petitioned by Healy Homes of Summerfield LLC, and hopefully they're sitting across from us now.
Wayne,
And
do you,
we got the,
which blinds are blinding you?
To this one?
Behind there.
put you in the hot seat.
Oh, there is somebody up there.
You want to build what?
You're trying to hide.
Thank you, Mr. Rock, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Wayne Perry with Design Engineering. Here with us tonight also, Garrett Steele is here as a representative of the developer, and Mike Burke as well, if you have any questions beyond what I can help you with. So we're here tonight and have requested final approval of the amended planned unit development for Summerfield Point PUD. As was noted, the primary change or reason for this amendment request was to convert the attached condominium development units to single-family residential site condominium. As most of you are aware, this has been a number of years in the brewing. We're finally here at the final request for final approval of the amendment. And I believe we've addressed almost every one of the comments that were out there, except a couple of minor final typographical changes and some drafting within the final documents. So with that, we're here to answer any questions.
Well, we're going to hand it off to Brian now, and he can tell us what we're going to on the planning side.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I would just like to address the public in the back. I misspoke. It is final. It's not preliminary. So I apologize. So, sorry, that happened prior to the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
How's that,
I
Mr.
promise
Chair?
you won't interrupt you again, Brian. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Amy can interrupt me anytime she wants. I just want to make sure the mics are working. Are we good back there? You guys hear me okay? Thank you. Thanks again, Mr. Chair. So the items that are in front of you this evening, as noted on your agenda, we have the amended PUD agreement, we have the final PUD site plan, and we have the environmental impact assessment. All three of those items are before you for review, and ultimately, at such time as you're prepared, recommendation to the township board. The board does have final approval authority over each of those items. So these are all in front of you for recommendations. Just want to reiterate that. I will just start pretty quickly. As petitioner noted, Mr. Perry and his team, they've really addressed the majority of the comments that have been provided thus far. But I do have a couple I think I'll just go through to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I did prepare a review of the private road that was included as part of the final PUD site plan. So I did have a couple of comments on that, none of which are earth-shattering. Quite honestly, pretty much everything is either met or where it's not met, they're seeking deviations through the PUD. So we don't have any real issues there. I did have a comment. I want to make sure that if it hasn't happened already, that we do make sure that any comments on the private road maintenance agreement get addressed. So anything that staff or the township attorney has prepared or provided in terms of a review on that agreement, I want to make sure that that's covered as part of your recommendation, should you be prepared to do one this evening. And then, of course, really, the private road is much more engineering and public safety than it is planning and zoning. So anything that Shelby or her team came up with, or any comments, obviously, from Brighton Area Fire Authority are going to be very important as well. That's really, I can get into more detail if you want, but that's sort of the long and short of it. With respect to the final condominium plan, similar to my initial comment on the road, there is a PUD agreement with some modifications that are included as part of this. Want to make sure, again, any staff comments or anything from the township attorney has been addressed, or if it has not, or it's pending, want to make sure that you incorporate that if you're going to consider a favorable recommendation this evening. I will note that the items that I brought up previously have all been covered by both the condominium documents as well as the PUD agreement. So I don't have any outstanding items as it relates to that. And my sort of catch-all comment from my review letter is the plans that are before you are consistent with the amended and approved PUD. And that includes the conditions that were attached to those approvals as well. You may recall that there were a few items of note, in particular, the emergency access gate that will block off the roadway connection, and some conditions that went with that, ensuring that proper signage was there, ensuring that proper snow removal was conducted. There's verbiage in both the PUD agreement and the condo docs that cover all of that. The plans include the detail that was required. So I feel pretty comfortable that all of those items to this point have been satisfied, at least to my satisfaction. Of course, you guys have to make that same determination for yourselves. And then my closing comment is simply, again, making sure as it relates to the plans and the site layout that any engineering issues or any comments provided by the fire authority get addressed.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
You're very welcome.
Shelby.
My comments are pretty minor. Some of the issues are just some labeling problems, some rim elevations that are wrong that just need to be fixed. Those can always be fixed as part of the construction plan review phase with MHOG as well. One of the major drainage issues is there are outstanding comments from the Drain Commission. We'll want to see approval from them prior to any like land use approval. We just wanted an additional valve added to the plans that is shown in the letter, and then for the private road, after final site plan approval, we will want to see construction plans for the private road, and that would include like the profiles of the proposed private road, which aren't included in this set. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Shelby. Any questions or concerns yet up front? All right.
Shelley, when do you need to see those 3 items that they're short? You said, this is what you said about the environmental.
Most of my comments are they're just like typos that will be fixed. So those I think can just be like a
There were
condition
2
of.
soil borings that were short for the Drain Commission, correct?
Oh, yeah, I think those need to be completed prior to us giving them any, like, final approval. Whether that's, I don't know how we would normally do that, if it would be at land use or, so before any land use permit was issued, we'd want that settled. I don't think any of the comments the Drain Commission have will greatly change this site plan. The layout will probably stay exactly how it is. Their comments are more based on the calculations and just more information that needs to be provided and fixed.
And you mentioned about the road construction
Right.
plans. When will you get final review to sign off on that?
Typically, we'll review the final site plan, which is this document, and then I will give a proposal to Amy to do a final construction plan review of the private road, and that's done after. It doesn't come to this commission. I think we just work on it with staff. Just to make sure it meets your engineering standards.
Okay. But that's done at what point?
Before land use.
Before land use, okay.
I have a question regarding master deed and bylaws. At what point in time do those need to be fully affirmed and agreed upon?
Will it happen at board?
So if there's anything that needs to be revised or changed or edited,
Correct.
That
It
would
happen
be-
at the board. What will happen is if they receive approval tonight, they will submit a week before their board meeting that they're scheduled to be heard at. And we will review it to make sure that all the conditions, if there is any that you guys place tonight, is taken care of before it goes to the board meeting.
but that's not in respect to anything with master deed or bylaws that would need
They
to be.
have- Yes, they have to approve the master deed and bylaws.
Okay, but if there's any corrections that we feel need to be made this evening,
Then that's when they will submit the week before the township board meeting, and then we will review it per your conditions. If you put any conditions tonight on things that you want to change.
in the master deed and bylaws, okay,
They will make those changes prior to going to the board.
thank you.
Anything else? I wanted to point out, too, that we have a letter from the Brighton Area Fire Authority that indicates that all previous submittals are addressed and access to water supply and comments have been met, so they're all set. Very good.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think it'd be beneficial to the audience to state that we haven't seen this project in about a year and a half. But there's been a significant process that has happened in 2022 and 2023. And so in November of '22, this proposal came before this planning commission. Again, in April of '23, it came before, so in between there, tweaks and modifications were made. Then again in May of 2023, it came before the planning commission as well. So 3 meetings with this board before it went to the township board in July of 2023. There's been a long waiting period now between, an entire year happened between those. But those modifications and all those conversations that happened a year and a half ago have come before us now in these plans that we see tonight. So I thought that'd be helpful
Yep.
for the audience.
Right here. I think it's helpful, too, because there's a lot of folks that maybe are here tonight wondering what's going on, and it's been going on for several years, rather than just what you hear tonight. So there's a lot that's gone down the tunnel. So, all right.
Mr. Chair, if I could just
Go
jump
right
in
ahead, Brian.
real quickly too, maybe it would be beneficial as well for the public, and since we're on TV now, anyone on TV, Amy, could you scroll to the proposed plan? So the plan that's on the screen now was the originally approved. It is not the recently amended per the process that Eric just described. So the plan that's on the screen now is what is currently before the commission.
And just to point out, because it's not evident by this, they're finishing off the attached units in the condo development phase to the right-hand side there, and then you see subdivision lots, which are site condos, or part of the PUD, throughout the rest of it. It used to all be attached condominiums, so that's worth noting too. You can see the condominiums, upper right-hand corner. They're adding some more, a small bit up there, and those will all be on the same HOA, as I recall, correct?
All right.
Are you splitting the HHA or HA?
These,
HOA.
okay, these will be new condominiums.
Right.
Okay, they will not be a part of the existing condominium that is
Okay.
out there today.
Not even the attached ones?
Correct.
Okay. So everything that's new on that board will be in its
Yeah.
own?
However, if I could, for
Sure.
clarification, there will be 2 condominiums created within this amended portion of the PUD. There will be a condominium development called Summerfield Point,
Estates.
I lost it.
I think it's
Estates.
Yeah.
Thank you. Summerfield Point Estates. That will contain units 1 through 102, which are the single-family residential units depicted on this plan. Then there will be another condominium created called Summerfield Point Attached Condominiums, which will contain the remaining 3 buildings, units 1 through 12, in the new condominium, that were the attached units previously approved that we're not changing, but will now be constructed. So there's actually 2 separate condominium developments being proposed in this amended phase of the project.
Why are they not, why was it decided not to include them in the existing development, those 3?
The original condominium can no longer be expanded.
Because of the expansion?
Because of the timeline
The expansion,
requirements.
yeah, okay.
Yes.
Are they tied to that condo at all in terms of they have the same board and so forth? Or do they have to have their own set of taxes, their own separate board for 3 units with 3 people?
Yes, they have their own separate, it's their own separate condominium.
So, asking the question before about the bylaws and master deeds, there's a couple of areas where it just says site condominiums. I think it needs to be clearly defined when you're talking about the 2 different entities, to make sure we're talking about Summerfield Estates and Summerfield Point, so that there's a distinction between the 2 of them. There's some language that just refers to,
There's 2 separate master deeds and 2 separate sets of bylaws.
There's actually 3, if you include the 3rd development.
Summerfield Attached Master, Summerfield
The existing
Estates.
development?
Okay,
Correct,
thank you.
There's actually 3.
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other comments from up front? At this point, I guess I'll open it up to a call to the public. Anyone who would like to talk about this particular case could come forward at this point to the podium and state your name and your address and give us what you're thinking. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Jamie Shinjek, and I live at 4441 Astor, which is right underneath this project in Hampton Ridge. It's nice to see all of you again. You probably remember me from 22 and 23. First I want to thank all of you, as well as the Township Board and also Mr. Healy's representatives for listening to my concerns from a few years ago pertaining to the differences in lifestyles, because obviously living in attached condos is a lot different from a living standpoint than single-family homes. So I do appreciate the thoughtfulness of listening to my concerns as well as some other residents in my community by implementing the one-day-a-week landscaping. So the reason I'm back up here, and I apologize, is because reading through the bylaws, as Commissioner McCree pointed out, there's something that still kind of stands out as concerning for me when the standalone homes are going to have the ability to get approval from their HOA board for play structures, fire pits, and patios and decks. So it kind of takes what is in normally attached condominiums is a standardized yard appearance. When you have 102 homes with people having differences in their yards, I'm curious from a sustainability standpoint how a lawn maintenance company is going to go through 100 different yards over time when each yard is going to have different components. It would make more sense if the bylaws didn't allow for that approval. It would make it easier, because I do feel like years from now, as families grow in those homes, they're going to add those things. It's going to make it more complicated to keep the one-day-a-week lawn care, which is something that is still of high concern for me and some of our residents from a noise and disruption standpoint, considering we only deal with it once a week. We live right next to Westbury Apartments, which is once a week, and as well as Lakewood Knoll. So I just wanted to kind of point that out as a spot in the bylaws that I don't quite understand how it meshes with the 1 day a week lawn care. And I don't know if Mr. Healy or his team has investigated the cost that would come with asking homeowners, I believe these homes started at $450,000 to mortgage and then pay on top of that for the lawn care being part of their dues. So, thank you.
Hello, my name is Maria Belcher. I live at 4082 Hampton Ridge Boulevard. I have been a resident at Hampton Ridge for 14 years and on its board for 12 years. And I have a few items that the board members are still concerned about. The first one is that the point where our two communities will be closest, the area that is called open space on the diagram up there, there is a proposed planting of a few maple trees and a handful of tulip trees, which is fine. But because of the difference in the lifestyles of the communities, we would propose that close to the border between the two communities, that a hedge be planted, a fast-growing, dense type of hedge, possibly Japanese elm shrubs, that would grow rapidly and provide a sound and a visual buffer between the two communities, and would also provide housing for some of the birds and smaller animals that are going to be displaced. The second one that we want to address is oak trees. As you can see, I walked back there, and there are oak trees back on the property that's going to be cleared. We had a problem with oak tree disease this past winter and last summer, and had to wait until the winter time to have those trees removed to prevent the disease from becoming airborne and spreading to other trees. And we would ask that this board require that same procedure, waiting until the trees are dormant and the weather is cold, to protect the other oak trees that still exist in our neighborhood and in the other neighborhoods close by. The third thing that I would like to ask about is where our road ends and their road would merge with ours, that is a swamp. And I'm sure that the elevation will have to change. If you look at that diagram where those houses, 102 houses so close together, 5 houses per acre roughly, the only place to push snow in the winter really would be in that open space, which is fine. Right now that area is a lower elevation than us, but we're going to be sharing storm drains in that area. And we want to be rest assured that all the snow isn't pushed to that open space. I don't know where they'll push snow to, but that's their problem. I'm worried about the storm drains there being damaged and overrun with copious amounts. If we have a heavy snow and you've got a 20-foot hill of snow sitting on top of storm drains, which is where those drains are proposed to be, is in that open space, then there's going to be problems, and we don't want to be in the position of having to deal with storm drain problems. So those are issues that the board at Hampton Ridge wishes that this board would address prior to the construction of this project. We thank you for listening to our concerns, and we thank you for our efforts to help us to achieve a situation where we can be good neighbors to this new community, and that they likewise can become good neighbors for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Seeing none, I'll bring it back up front for any additional discussion or questions.
When this is approved, what is the estimated time for beginning construction?
This project will still need to go through the permitting process. I can only guess, but based upon the current timelines of receiving final permits from the state of Michigan through Eagle for water and sewer, following review and permitting of the project here for construction, it could be 6 to 7 months.
So I'm just, in reference to the comment that was just made regarding oak trees, I mean, if there's specific language in here regarding what trees would be remaining, what trees would have to come down.
Correct.
So what assurances can we give that would show if there are oak trees that need to be saved, that can be transparent? that
I'm not
question?
sure I understand your question. The concern, I believe, that was stated was oak trees being removed, not oak
Right.
trees being saved.
Well, but if they're in the area that delineates what has to, I mean, because there are specific references, again, in here that says where trees have to come down.
Yes.
So beyond that, in an area that they would not be touched, is there something that can show from here forward that residents could actually see visually? From here forward is where trees going to be removed for construction, so that they know that oak trees beyond that are going to be left. Does that make sense?
The tree clearing limits are shown in the construction plans.
Okay?
So yes, the areas are defined where trees are going to remain and where trees are going to be removed.
So in those areas that they're going to remain, how would we put into the language of what we're talking about this evening to only touch those that are, I mean, if they're diseased and they've got to come down, they're going to have to come down while the development's going.
Well, they're not going to take anything down that is not supposed to come down, right? They're only going to take down what's supposed to come down. They're going to leave
Correct.
everything else.
Yes.
Okay. But I guess we need to be cognizant of what this disease is, what it looks like, so that you don't chop down a tree and then the one next to it dies because
It spreads.
it spreads. So,
For the oak will, it's just, there's like certain times of the year that you don't cut down oaks. So I
Right.
think they would need, if you are concerned about it, there would just need to be some requirement for their plan to not cut oak trees during, like, here to
Yes.
here. I don't know the dates. I think
Okay.
it's sometime in the spring, maybe.
April 15th.
Licensed-
Through July 15th.
Right. Sometimes there's like a
Licensed
zoning
arborists
ordinance.
are not allowed to do that, and they lose their licensure if they do.
Right, and
So the
if there's an
industry
eagle,
polices itself.
any eagle wetland permit would probably require that anyways. But
Okay.
maybe.
the equal permit help, that helps. Okay. Anything else?
Is there a comment about the 1 day a week lawn maintenance? You know, I reviewed the bylaws that were mentioned, and it seemed as though the comment kind of indicated that it would be done by the same lawn care service, but that's not how I read the bylaws. It says, "The master deed shall also provide that the association shall designate 1 day a week for lawn mowing." So what I take from that is that everyone's lawn is their responsibility to care for, but the association designates a Saturday or so, whatever day they designate, when they can mow their lawns. Am I reading that correctly?
That is in the PUD, I think is what you were reading.
Yes, yes, that's in the PUD. It's, section 14
Is that this packet?
in this packet here, yeah. Paper packet. Is that the,
I believe the restriction that was requested and that was put into the documents was to limit it to 1 day.
correct?
But it doesn't state who's responsible, the
It does.
condo owner or the association.
It says, please and shall provide that the association shall be responsible for maintaining the lawn and sprinkler system in yard area.
Okay,
in
there
yard
you go, that
area.
answers your question.
Yeah, so it-
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm more difficult.
And the yard area located.
So, I understand the law. I understand the law and the issue with having to, create a 3-unit condo association. But with a 3-unit, it's just like littered with problems after even before you're gone. The association is gonna have to deal with this forever, these 3 people. And these 3 people are going to have increased costs of maintenance because they can only spread their costs of maintaining their units over 3 units, not over the 100 units that are there. Yep, if you can interrupt and tell me it
Can I
does.
ask a quick question?
Yeah.
What 3 units are we talking about?
Well, didn't you say one of the the master deed is made up, one of the associations made up of 3 units?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
3 buildings, 12 units.
Okay, I feel better.
No, yeah, sorry.
I feel better.
No, and if I misspoke, I apologize.
Yeah.
The smaller of the 2 condominiums is the remaining attached,
Right.
and there's 3 buildings, each with 4 units.
So this is where I'm going with it. I see this all the time.
Yep.
This is one of the reasons why I sit here, to be honest with you. So to come here and be quiet I might as well just go home and not come here. But the problem is then those 12 units have to share the cost and burden of, an $1,800 review every year, the cost of just mowing their 12 yards. They don't get the benefit of economies of scale over the size of the other two associations. Is there any way, and I'm not an attorney, and I haven't seen this in the 130 condos that I manage, so, I know it might not exist, but is there any way that they could be tied in from an easement agreement to the maintenance of the buildings and the units so that they can take advantage of the economies of scale that the other 200 units are going to benefit from? It's going to be, woefully disproportionate. It just is. And then it's so difficult to get people to be on the board when they're faced with having to manage those expenses, let alone trying to spread a 3-unit board, every year, which means someone should have to serve for 4 years, or the same 3 people are going to serve for the next 20. It just puts so much burden on the residents, and I just don't know if there's a way that we could just give that some thought while we're working on this. There might not be, but I want to try and fight for it if I can, because I see what it does financially to these people. And those 12 units, their dues are going to be $80 to $100 a month higher than the rest of the association. They will be. I can show you the math. So I hate to see that burden. I hate approving something knowing that burden is destined. And I don't know if there might be a way to maybe share in an easement agreement on the road maintenance. Like, I assume the road, because then what are they going to pay, a proportionate share for their 12 units for the road maintenance? So does that mean that everyone will share equally in the road maintenance and it'll just be spread equally over all the units? Because if
will
that's
have
the
to
case,
be-
I feel better, like if lawn care and if road maintenances are rolled into that, then those costs go down significantly for them.
Yeah. Can they share in those things? Absolutely, they can.
All right, so I'm wondering if there's a way we could maybe include that into the road maintenance agreement or into a shared easement agreement of some way. That's just my only point. The only other comment I would make while I'm in, and then I will be quiet, is I think there is value while you're in the early stages of not making it a requirement that the board considers taking trash removal, but that we make trash removal required for all of the associations to be responsible for. And this is the reason why, is you're going to do it the way you're doing it, and these brand-new roads, then we know the number one impactor to road maintenance and decreasing the value of the roads is the trash removal companies coming in daily. Getting trash removal companies come in one day a week can save on the road's longevity by at least 5 years. We know that. And if we just started out that way, where we can put the responsibility of trash removal right with the association, where they can get better pricing on trash removal for all of the residents, rather than each of them getting it independently and having to fight with the different firms to try and do it on a certain day, and then for the association to force it when they don't know that they have to do that, and then they get a different day, and now they got to change trash services. It's a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. So if we could possibly consolidate that too, that would be an excellent suggestion for the people who have to monitor
Would
it
the
later.
trash removal be
Trash
township?
removal is through the township.
Yeah.
Then how do we even have it written that way?
Well,
I think the attorney had it.
I think we should still, knowing that though, I think we should change it because that could always change. Unlikely, but it could change.
that's why I didn't.
So
we didn't
all the more
ask them to remove
reason,
it.
making that subtle change in there doesn't impact anybody right now, but then if it ever goes back, it makes all of the administrative nightmares that developers create for this industry. And why I got on this board was to try
If it was
and
back,
minimize
they'd have a
that.
bigger problem than just the
But those are my only
subdivision.
2 comments so far.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything? No? Well, do we have enough to make a motion? Anyone? Oh, I feel like I'm talking to myself. Thinking it over, Eric?
Mary Ann, do you have more PUD comments? You alluded to that a bit ago.
No, I actually, I had all my notes on here, but those were all resolved with listening to Brian.
There was a public comment about the trees in the open space. And I'm reviewing the landscape plan. It does show 10 tulip trees and 4 of the sugar maples, as the public had mentioned. What's the petitioner's thought about changing that same amount of trees to conifers so that it offers year-round visual protection and that the leaves aren't falling then on them for 5 or 6 months out of the year?
And we
We'd be
want to
happy
do
to
similar.
modify trees, that's not a problem whatsoever. Are you talking about change all of the trees to a form of conifer?
Those 14 that I mentioned, so the 10 tulip trees.
Okay.
And then the 4.
Right.
Yep, so changing those to conifers,
Sure.
so that offers that year-long protection for you.
We're talking about the other open space as well? To the right?
I think it's the one which would be to the north,
Right.
near the northwest.
Right, with the curve.
Yeah, and as I review the air photo, directly adjacent to that is 2 units of the adjacent properties where their front doors kind of come out into that space. And so I think it'd be beneficial to the adjacent community to do that.
We got similar in the, to the right, toward the front of the development as well.
Yeah.
Because there's condominium units right there facing the open space. What do we have in there right now? Do you have did you say you had the landscape plan open?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's 14 total.
And that's for both open spaces?
I'm sorry, it's for,
The open space in the center
Yes.
portion of the project is not proposed to be cleared.
Okay, so you get trees and,
Yes,
okay, all right.
Mhm.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I can make a motion if no one else wants to
Go right ahead.
jump in. All right, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the Township Board approval of the PUD agreement for Summerfield Point Plan Unit Development, provided that the comments in the PUD agreement become codified and part of the final submittal.
Any discussion?
Second.
Do we have to add anything about the drains, and there's a laundry list of things from the Drain Commission?
That'd be environmental, right?
That will be part of the,
Site plan.
part of the final site plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should add this, though, that this planning commission finds that the private road requirements found in section 15.05 of the zoning ordinance are found to be met.
All right.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend to the Township Board approval of the environmental impact assessment dated February 14th, 2025.
Can I have a second?
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously, and I'll look for recommendation on the final site plan.
And Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend approval of the final site plan dated February 14th, 2025 to the Township Board for Summerfield Point Plan Unit Development. The following condition, that the engineer's review letter and the conditions found in there be updated as a part of this. That the fire department review is met and their requirements as well, along with the drain commissioner's review letter, prior to the issuance of a land use permit.
Support.
Hold on a second. Let me double check a couple things here. And that the, it's a big submittal, give me a second. And that the 14 trees adjacent to the open space near the northwest corner of the proposed development be swapped for coniferous trees.
Support.
Any other
Can
discussion?
can I have a point of clarification, please?
Sure, certainly.
Thank you. You specifically stated at the start of this motion that all items in the engineer's review letter will be resolved. Okay, please review under traffic and roadways, comment 1 with regard to second sentence. Okay. The statement is correct. Your road alignment requirement in your road ordinance is 150 foot on the center line. However, in the PUD agreement that you have recommended approval, as was previously noted, we have a deviation. Hence, you now have an inconsistency between your motion and what this letter says.
So the request then is that we accommodate for the deviation that's pointed out in the engineer's review letter.
Thank you.
Support.
Any other?
Accommodate or approve or recommend?
Recommend approval of the deviation.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just before there's a
You can.
vote. So there are 3 road deviations that are included in the PUD agreement. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear. I don't know if, I didn't read Shelby's letter, sorry, Shelby. I don't know if we want to specifically exclude the items addressed by the deviations in the PUD agreement, or I guess I just wanted to make sure I felt this was the opportunity to make sure that we didn't miss the other 2 just in case. So there's a road width deviation and there's an easement width deviation, as well as I believe what was referred to as
The horizontal
curve. Yeah, sorry, I'm not an engineer. So I guess I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Yeah, let me restate then that comment. That this commission finds that the easement deviation with, yep, the easement deviation, the road width deviation, and the horizontal curve deviation are found acceptable to this planning commission. Thank you, everyone, for your help.
Any other discussion?
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Passed unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your tenacity. You guys have really done a lot of work, and you worked with the neighbors and the community, and we appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Moving on to our second public hearing. Whoop, my computer just decided not to do it. All right. Hearing number 2, consideration of a special use site plan and environmental impact assessment for the proposed 15,231 square foot building addition and parking lot for improvements for 360 Rodo. The property is located at 741 Victory Lane and east side of Victory Lane, south of Grand River. The request is submitted by Neil Ganshorn, okay, and Rand Construction. That must be you guys. Tell us what you got.
Okay, my name is Neil Gansmer from Rand Construction. I'm joined here by Jeff Forslinger, who is part of the ownership group of 360 Roto. We are a roto molding, plastic roto molding company, using basically large machines that rotate with plastic pellets inside that melt to the outside of the mold, and then get cooled off, and you get a custom molded fabrication. So they are doing well enough to have the need to expand, and they'd like to do that in this township. So they have space behind their existing building with which to move things back without impacting truck operations or parking requirements. So if you want to pull it up there, I can.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Finishing the thought on the other one.
So this is the expansion of their existing facility, and as well as a truck dock, an unheated truck dock space, where the trucks will just back into a truck well area, covered by the building overhead. So the entire building would be basically an extension, it's the exact same construction type of the existing building, just extended backward into to the east. This is a site that's southwest of the Home Depot property, so it backs up right in that little top corner to the Home Depot property. With this expansion, this site is surrounded on both sides by drainage fields, some of the temporary wetlands. So the water table is pretty high, so there is you'll notice a lack of stormwater, underground stormwater, which requires the rest of the paving to be removed, so we can regrade the property to make it flow.
Thank you.
To a new detention basin, and you see some concrete spillways on the south side and the north side to be able to get the stormwater drainage off. So that's the main reason why all that asphalt around is slated to be removed, but put back in the exact same location with different slopes now. So happy to answer any questions. The actual total amount is just over 18,000 square foot, including the truck well in that square footage.
All right. Let's go to Brian first.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. So procedurally, the items before you with this request are also to be put in the form of recommendations to the Township Board. So we have the special land use, the environmental impact assessment, and the site plan. All three of those are in front of you tonight for recommendation. The board has final review and approval authority over all three. So I will just jump in and start with the special land use and then work into some site plan comments. So based on our review, did find that the special land use standards of section 1903 are met. My caveat to that, as per normal, is making sure that engineering issues and or fire authority issues are addressed as part of the review process. With respect to the site plan itself, so the proposed building addition has more metal siding than what section 12.01 would typically allow. However, there is a footnote to that section that gives the commission the discretion to allow different materials or to vary from the percentages based on consistency with an existing building. So in this case, we have an expansion, as I understand it, and is documented by what I've seen in aerial photos as well as the site plans. What they're proposing to construct would match the existing building, so you do have the discretion to allow them to match materials and colors to the existing building, even though it doesn't fully comply with what your current standard would be were this an entirely new building.
Brian, can I ask a question?
Please.
While you're on that point, so what you're saying is what's currently there is not conforming to what the requirements are currently?
So based on what I'm seeing with the addition, yes. I don't have full.
I'm talking about what's existing there for exterior.
That would be my gut feeling. I don't know for certain because I don't have the full depiction of the existing building, but the materials they are proposing do match those on the existing building.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if that, hopefully that clarifies
Sort of.
in a weird way. We can go back to it if we need
Okay.
to. I did ask for petitioner to bring material and color samples for your consideration this evening. So that'd be great. Amy, if you want to pull that up. Oh, perfect.
This is the existing building on the bottom, and this is really the only view that you'll see as the public, unless you're enclosed in their fence all on the back of the site. But basically, you'll see the new is just literally extending the exact same materials, and the height of the masonry wainscot is important for forklift traffic on the inside, impact resistance on the outside wall. So it's more of a durability type thing to maintain exactly what we have here.
So the new is looking at the north side of the building,
so
the old is looking at the south side of the building, correct?
They're both from north side. This is a view from right here.
Yep.
So both of them, the panorama is a view from right here.
Yeah.
And looking this way, you see the first bump is the end of the truck well, which bumps back, and the second bump is.
Oh, so you're on the inside of where the, okay,
right around
I
here,
see.
which is the only
Got
way
it.
that really anyone's going to see the building.
Thank you.
It's pretty tough back in the back.
Thank you.
thanks for
Yeah.
providing those.
Hey,
Appreciate it.
Ken, it's buried, it's like 300 feet back.
I'm sorry, Brian, those were submitted
That's okay.
after, so I was like, well.
No, I typically, because I obviously, they can't submit material samples to me at my office for review, so I typically just want to make sure that they're presented at the meeting so that we're all on the same page of what's in the plans versus what it will look like in reality, so that you guys aren't surprised when you see it built and then ask why we let that happen. So thank you for providing that, and hopefully that provides better clarification than I was able to. I do have a couple more, sorry, Mr. Chair. So, a couple lighting comments. So, this is kind of my typical, anytime we have a new special land use approval on a previously developed site, we have an opportunity to bring site deficiencies into compliance in relation to sort of the total project itself. So, trying to keep things in order. This is a pretty big addition, so I think there are some things that could be warranted in terms of improvements here. So the first thing I was looking at was lighting. I was not able to really tell if all of the existing site lighting meets current standards. Based on looking at aerial photos and street views on the internet, I believe the pole-mounted fixtures do. Seeing a couple of the photos in front of you, I would suggest that maybe a couple of those wall mounts do not. So yeah, this is just one of those things where if those were just, you wouldn't even necessarily have to replace them if they can be shielded so that the light source isn't visible and they shine down instead of out. That's really what we're looking for. So if commission's okay with that, I feel comfortable in you requiring that improvement as part of this overall project. Again, kind of given the scope of the size of the addition in relation to adding a handful of shields to make these fixtures just a little bit better and actually bring them into compliance. Sticking with lighting for 1 second, this is super nitpicky and I apologize for that, but there is one single reading on the photometric plan that exceeds your 10.0 foot candle maximum.
It's a few pages.
I'm hoping that it was
Bold.
either A typo,
We'll scoot it over about 3 inches and
or-
we'll not have any issues.
or B, if it can just be tweaked so that we can get that to 10.0 or
The
less.
plan was to match that northern side, third and a third and a
Yeah.
third, and yeah, we can.
It works to almost perfection, but I did catch the one single point, and I want to make sure that gets corrected as part of this. Landscaping, couple comments on the landscape plan. So there is a small portion, Amy, yeah, that's perfect. The northeast corner actually abuts commercial land, or a commercial zone, and that requires a buffer zone B. Now, there's a lot of existing vegetation in the area, and I know there's some topographic issues, so I think I hopefully clarified this in my letter. I don't think that the wall or berm requirement is necessary in this instance. I do, however, want to see the required plantings installed. So the first version of the plan that we reviewed had the exact number of required plantings, just in that little like 80 to 100 foot section. The revised version was deficient slightly. So I was hoping that we could get the extra plantings just added back in that small
I
area.
think what happened is they put the buffer on the far east side instead of that little section.
I gotcha.
So I think that we actually have more that we need on the far east versus that little section up there. 'Cause that's the portion, that little section is what abuts
Commercial.
the Home Depot project.
Yeah, yep. So,
So I think we need to move them up or make a modification in final site plan review.
yeah, ultimately, Commission, it's up to you. You also have the discretion to modify landscape requirements if you so choose. I just wanted to, like I said, in the original version, the plantings were kind of shifted around, so my numbers added up, and you know how I like my numbers to add up. So, but if the total amount of plantings are still on the plan, I'll leave that up to you all, whether you think that's sufficient or if you want to see them relocated as part of the project.
Mr. Chair, got a question for Brian, or a comment. It appears as though there is a tree in the existing building.
Yeah.
On the plan.
That's my next one.
Oh, perfect.
So
It might be there. I just,
yeah, so there is a tree depicted on the landscape plan that is square in the middle of the existing building. So that needs to be relocated on the
Is
plan.
that kind of a trademark thing for your company?
It's a green roof.
It's very green. Sustainability.
It is, and ironically, it's included in the calculations. I mean, the tree was on there.
It's
It
out in the front.
just got bumped into the wrong location. So I want to make sure that that gets corrected as part of this. Thank you, Aaron, for that. And I did have another comment. I'm going to scratch it because I just looked at the aerial images again. I mean, the front of this site is actually really well the whole site's actually really well landscaped, to be honest, especially in an industrial zone. I don't think we need, unless you want it. I had originally requested verification that greenbelt plantings were fully provided. As long as what's shown on Google is remotely still there, they're fine. I can tell you right now, they meet that requirement. So I'm going to scratch that. And then there is an established nonconformity in terms of the current waste receptacle and enclosure location. It is in a side yard, which is allowed, but it does slightly encroach into the side yard setback. So this is one of those situations where if there's a better location or if there's a way to bring it into compliance, we could certainly discuss that. Alternatively, you could also, if you're okay with it and it functions well, you could allow it to remain as an existing condition and not force them to have to relocate concrete base pads and masonry walls, et cetera. So I kind of leave that one in your court as well. Personally, as long as it's functioning okay for the petitioner, I don't think it's intrusive or causing any harm to neighboring properties, especially given how well the site is landscaped. So my opinion would be it's probably not worth the cost that would add up for the petitioner to make them redo their dumpster and enclosure. But again, it's part of my job to bring up these things when I see deficiencies. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
I don't believe there's a wall around that dumpster.
Nice.
The whole dumpster enclosure around the south side.
There's a fence, but as soon as you pull out, you see that big green dumpster.
Oh, you were talking about the existing enclosure on the south side.
Yeah, but what's the green dumpster just temporary? What was the?
Yes, that true enclosure's on the south side there.
Yeah, the gates were locked when I was there. I couldn't get to the back. I just saw that green dumpster.
Yeah, that one is planned to be not there. As well as the outdoor storage that's out there, which will be.
Is that including the shipping container and the shed and all that?
That's the reason we're building it.
That's the nonconformity issue?
We're building addition to put things on the inside.
Okay.
There we go.
Good.
Any other questions? Okay. Shelby?
I don't have too much on this. One thing with the parking lot is the curb and gutter that's proposed doesn't match township standards, but it does match the existing curb and gutter, so it would make sense to continue with the existing detail they have. And then they added a water quality control pond, and that collects any additional impervious surface. They have a small amount of impervious surface being added to the site. Not a lot. A lot of that area where the expansion is already was pavement. And then one thing I didn't put in my letter, but I thought was worth mentioning, they did, per the first letter from the fire authority, they are making them put a fire hydrant in the back corner of the site. Since that's public water main, it'll need to be shown in an easement, and then after final approval, it'll go to MHOG for their review and approval and permitting with the state. So I just wanted, nothing that you guys need to do with, but just so the petitioner knows that's the next step for the water main. And that's all I got.
So they're putting a fire hydrant, they're
Yeah, and
requiring that to be in the back?
Northeast corner. So they're gonna put, you can see kind of where the pavement's being removed to put a 8-inch water main in.
Okay.
It's probably just to get more coverage on the back portion of their building.
Back in this far corner.
Okay.
We'd like to go without it, but it's gonna.
If you ever need it, it'll be really convenient.
Okay. And the Brighton Area Fire Authority says you're up to date with everything there, so we appreciate that. Any other discussion up front from the impact assessment or any other portions of the documentation? All right. If not, I will call to the public at this time. For anyone who'd like to speak about this project, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address. Nobody's coming. All right, I'm going to close the call to the public and bring it back up front and look for discussion or a motion.
Yeah, I'm prepared to make a motion. To the petitioner, it's exciting to know that your business is successful. And in my opinion, this is one of those instances where the right business is in the right location, on the right road, with the right amount of coverage where no one, you get to get tucked in back there and hidden, and that's really great. So,
It did look nice, too.
yeah, and thank you for keeping it up, too. It's great. Yeah, so unless there's not any other discussion, I am prepared to make a motion. What that motion would look like is for all three. The first two wouldn't have any conditions, but the last one, the site plan, would have several conditions to it based off of what I saw, so.
Do we have to say, put a condition on the steel? Amount of steel?
The site,
Siding.
On the building? Yeah,
Sure, the
Fine.
site
building
plan.
materials deviation would
Yep.
be under site plan, I
plan.
believe, yeah. So, all right, Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend to the Township Board the approval of the special use application for the addition to the 360 Roto property located at 741 Victory Drive.
Support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we're unanimous. We'll move on to the next recommendation.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend to the Township Board the approval of the environmental impact assessment dated January 21st, 2025 for the 360 Roto property at 741 Victory Drive.
Support.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we passed, and we are on to the recommendation for the site plan.
And Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend to the Township Board approval of the site plan dated February 18th, 2025 for 360 Roto with the following conditions. That this planning commission finds that the building materials and the deviation requested tonight is acceptable in this location as it matches the existing building facade, and it's in a location where the addition is completely screened from public view. That updates are made to the landscape plan, including the depiction of one of the trees inside the existing building. That this commission finds that a deviation from the wall and burn requirements in the landscape requirements of the ordinance is not necessary because of existing topography and vegetation on the site. And that the landscaping plan be updated to meet the ordinance specific to the planting number. That the existing building mounted site lights are brought to conformance in regards to shielding, so that those are brought up to township standards. And that the photometric plan be updated to address the one area of overexposure. That this commission finds that the waste receptacle location that's currently existing is sufficient, as it's, again, in the back of the property and outside view of public. And that the curb and gutter detail matches the existing, therefore we find it acceptable as well, even though it does not meet the requirements of the standard detail for curb and gutter in our community. That's
it.
all I have.
Any discussion? Do I have support?
Support.
I have support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None? Passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we're going to move on to the open hearing number 3. Consideration of zoning ordinance text amendments to Article 7, Commercial and Service Districts, Article 14, Parking and Loading, Unloading Standards, and Article 18, Site Plan Review in regards to drive-through restaurants. Are you carrying the ball, Amy? Are you?
Well, this is just a recap of
Okay.
what we discussed at the last meeting. So Brian made the changes after discussions with Shelby and the traffic engineers. And this is what is put forward. Is that okay? something?
Mr. Chair, if you'd like, I
Sorry.
can expand just a little bit without going overboard. But so we did discuss this last month. We went through a draft version of this. This version in front of you now, draft number 2, incorporates at least all of the ideas that we discussed. Whether or not you're okay with the exact verbiage is what we're here to talk about tonight. But I will tell you that we did find ways, I think, to address everything that was commented upon, and Shelby and her colleagues were kind enough to give us some additional language with respect to the traffic study comments, which we talked about last month as well. So I'll just run through, I guess, real quickly some of the changes. So under the use conditions, and this is really where most of the discussion is going to be tonight, we did add under paragraph 2, we added the word directional in the last part of that sentence, which is expected to generate 50 directional or fewer trips. That was one of the things we talked about last month, was finding some of the caveats that would allow for commission to waive or modify the spacing requirement between drive-throughs. I did incorporate in paragraph 4, I incorporated in parentheses cross-site access, which was a suggestion from Shelby's colleagues. Paragraph 5, I added basically more specific information, which was what we had talked about. So originally it had simply said, can't have impacts on neighboring residential properties. So I incorporated more specifically the landscaping and lighting provisions that are found in Article 12. And then also when adjacent to residential, I believe it's use is how we wrote this, that they would have to provide a sound study for the drive-through speaker system, which was something we had talked about last month as well. Item 6 was no change. Item 7 was no change. And then item 8 was another one that we had talked about putting forth a provision because the requirement was that they be located on a side, or that the drive-through lane and window be on a side or rear elevation. So we did have the discussion about, well, what does that mean for a corner lot? So I did put in provisions that would address a corner lot scenario, which would basically suggest that you could do it. I've identified it as it would have to be in the secondary street front yard. Whether or not you like that terminology, whether or not we need to be more explicit, certainly can do so. But I think the intent is clear, again, that if you're on a corner lot, typically there's one road that is the major road and the other is lesser. And the idea was that it should not be fronting the main or major road that the property is located on. And then I also added a provision that if they do put it in that secondary street front yard of a corner lot, that they would have to essentially meet the greenbelt or the screening standards, or potentially you could even require that they do more to make sure that you feel the property is, or that the views of the drive-through are mitigated properly. I don't believe I made any changes to the stacking section. So that remains as is. That gives you guys the discretion to require more or allow less based on data, depending on the nature of the use and ultimately the traffic study. And then we did incorporate some additional language under the 180709 with respect to the traffic study, and that was the language that was added by Shelby's colleagues. So we did add a little bit more specificity to what we were looking for with respect to the actual trip generation data. Hopefully that helps cover it, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to take any questions, though, that you may have.
Any questions or discussion?
I think it encapsulates our conversation last month, so thank you for your hard work.
I was paying attention.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Me too.
So is this something that requires a motion?
You're not alone.
Okay.
I have one question, and I apologize, Brian. I just thought of it.
Nope.
And I know you sent it to me, and I know Kelly and I both reviewed it, and something just popped out. So one of the sticky things that we get with is you have residential use. Can we do residential use and residential zoning district? Because what if a piece of property is vacant at the time?
Yeah, that's fine. No problem. I think the intent is there, but yeah. But a residential land use or
Would that
zoning
encompass,
district.
would that encompass something that would be multi-use?
Yes, the intent is residential is residential. So
Okay.
I'll add or zoning district, so that if it's undeveloped, but it is zoned residential, that they would still have to live up to that standard. And in fact, I've already added it.
And I apologize.
Don't.
Just-
There's no reason to. I was waiting for an email from Kelly with a bunch of markups anyway, to be honest. I know she's probably watching at home, so. Thanks, Kelly, for not killing it.
All right, any other discussion? Can I get a motion? I'm going to call the public first before I get a motion.
Yes, yeah.
See, I did that? At this point, I call to the public. If anyone would like to speak on this issue, please step forward at this time to the podium and state your name and address.
Good job.
All right, seeing none, we'll come back up front, and I will look for a motion.
So we're looking for a motion to accept the revisions for the...
Recommend the, yeah, recommend the.
Recommend approval for the revisions as...
Changes, yeah.
Changes as submitted.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. If I could just jump in real quick. I
Yes.
did just make that one change, so I would say, as submitted and
Amended?
modified, as amended tonight, whatever makes it clear.
As submitted and amended with the bullet point of residential also equals residential zoning. Was that a motion, Patty? Do you want to read that again?
To recommend to the Township Board approval of the revisions as submitted and amended this evening, and I have to reword residential as also residential zone.
Recommend that. That might make it clearer. See what I'm saying?
So,
Under hearing number 3, it says a recommendation of zoning ordinance amendment.
Recommend to the Township Board.
Pardon?
recommend to the Township Board regarding Article 7. Yes.
Commercial and service district in Article 14, parking and loading.
We're not doing that one yet, right?
Yeah, all three of them.
Okay. That's funny how they're chopped up in that individual. All those in favor, or do I have support?
Support.
I have double support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, move on to the Article 14, parking and unloading.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion regarding public hearing 4 for Article 14 regarding parking and loading and unloading standards to recommend to the Township Board approval of those changes.
Support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously, and we're on to Article 18.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to the Township Board for recommendation of the changes made regarding the traffic impact study amendments as submitted.
Support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. And we're on to open public hearing number 4.
You have to have the public hearing, or are we postponing it?
It looks like we're postponing it.
Move to postpone the till April 14th, the public hearing
Number
4.
Which is consideration of zoning ordinance text. See that?
Yeah. What, you want to read it?
We might as well put that in there.
Consideration of the zoning text amendments to Article 13 environmental protection regulations and amendments to Article, yeah, that's what I want. Postpone until April 15th.
All right. Support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So moved. And finally, we have open public hearing number 5. Review and comment of the master plan, update scope, and community engagement strategy. Yahoo.
Yes, sir. So we do have Jill again, for taking a full
I thought you looked familiar.
Or Jill.
On a first name basis.
I thought you looked familiar.
So as you saw in your packet, the Township Board has approved a budget, a baseline amount as it is related to the master plan update. And the board is looking for feedback on how we'd like to do the public engagement before a final decision is made on the final proposal, I believe. So they're looking for an update, and I'm sure Jill can probably give you more of an update on that. She was at the meetings.
Yes. So it sounded like there was a very specific, Jill Bain, Nichols Webster, you may remember. We assisted the township with your last, the planning commission specifically, with your last master plan, which we just finished. It was a little bit of a longer process to get it over the finish line, but that took, I think, 23, right? Yeah. But it sounds like there's been a few places, one specific focus area that maybe has been causing some stress that we wanted to take a look at that within the context of the master plan and see if we need to dial anything in a little bit more specifically in that area. But then through the conversation with the township board back in late January, early February, it sounded like maybe there was just an overall, just look at all of it briefly, not to do a deep dive into any of it, but just sort of, talk about a variety of things through this process. We proposed some public engagement opportunities, kind of targeted more at getting more participation in different parts of the community. But the township board was, in particular, like the open house that we had, remember we had that here. We had a pretty good turnout, but I think there were some board members who thought, well, gee, we can do that kind of thing. We could hold an open house and have some people, but for the number of people that came, they were feeling like, is that the best bang for our buck? So one of the things that we kind of worked on and then shared back in an updated proposal was, what if we simplified that approach? What if we made a sort of a canned kind of approach to some basic questions? We can use some of the things that we talked about last time, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel on some of these things. But then make the engagement part itself something that people could do on their phones. We could have some QR codes, and maybe those are things that could go out into different parts of the community, so that maybe there's something here, maybe there's a couple of things here, maybe we do it in different places, just to try to get more broad-based participation. And so those were some of the things that we put into the revised proposal. We did develop the online platform, and we have a draft of that kind of up. There's really nothing too much on there, but it's there for us to use. And then I think the survey that we would include too, and doing those maybe in chunks is one of the things that we're finding. We get a little bit more participation if we give people a survey that's got like 8 questions in it, as opposed to like the 20 to 25 questions. We would kind of look at it and they're like, I don't know what it is about just a short survey. People are maybe like, oh, this is fast, and then maybe they'll share it. So we do seem to feel like we get a little bit more. So breaking up the survey into different topics, and that way too people can just respond to the things that are of most interest to them. So some kind of new things that we have thought about doing to try to hit as many people as we can with the budget that seems reasonable. So, but wanting to hear more from you about some of the challenges that you've had or that you're facing and the things that you'd like to know from this process.
I have a couple questions. So when we did this the last time, do you recall off the top of your head as far as public engagement, percentage-wise, where we sat in relationship to other communities when you're doing this?
I don't recall that. I don't think it was, I think we had some good participation. I think we had a little bit better participation even on like the recreation plan, which also is kind of consistent with the way people answer these kinds of things. People understand recreation. A lot of times we're thinking about master plan, future land use, that can get a little out there for some people.
So you're
I
saying
don't
one
recall
sector,
that-
one
yeah.
sector was stronger in terms of response? Is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah, I don't think that we found anything here that was either like, wow, everybody's super engaged here, or wow, nobody cares about anything that's happening here. I think it was kind of middle of the road.
Yeah, I don't recall, but somehow I think that there was a response that was, it was a better response than you typically get. I don't know if any of the other members remember that or not, but, so if you were to try an attempt to get more engagement, what do you see as working?
What do I see as working?
Yes.
Well, some of those things like I was just mentioning. So we have the online platform that we didn't have last time. So there's another whole other venue that we can use. I do remember that, in particular with the rec plan, that when we did some engagement through Facebook, we got a lot of participation from people who use the recreation facilities specifically. So that was an interesting forum. We don't always see that, but that was one particular place where people were interested in responding, and we had a lot of families that were responding to that in that location. I think which kind of makes sense for like what this park serves and who comes here, and even pulling in tonight, seeing like people of all ages hanging out here on the first kind of warmish day of pre-spring. But so doing things like breaking up the survey into smaller pieces and then making that available. Not that they would, if you missed it last week, like last week was Housing Week, and there's still a chance to participate in those questions if you're just hearing about this now. But maybe stretching out the opportunity a little bit more so that even when we have to re-promote it, so usually it's like we're asking people 3 or 4 times, hey, make sure you fill out the survey. Hey, your input's really important. Hey, we really want to hear from you. But doing that, like, hey, how are you feeling about housing? How are you feeling about local goods and services? How are you feeling about the transportation network? And hitting that like multiple weeks in a row, not for a super long period because then people just stop paying attention. So I think that's one approach. Again, the online platform with some more interactive things that people can play around with. Tagging a map for things that they like or challenges that they see. We find that's another approach to get people interested and engaged. I think those are some of the things that we're finding are more meaningful.
I'd be interested just to go back to look at the results when it was initially done, to see where there might be room for improvement or where we got the best results. My other question, and I don't mean to hog the microphone here, but while I'm on a roll, when you're out there getting that information, is there ability to know who is sending in the messages so that you have an array of people that are giving you not the same things and not just one person filling it out 10 times?
Yes, so when we do our surveys, we use SurveyMonkey, and we don't limit to household, to like your computer, because we know some households share a computer, and we may see 2-3 responses from one laptop or whatever, and that's fine. But if we do see, like we can sometimes filter and sort by IP address, and if we see like 10 from an IP address, then we might start to wonder, like what's going on in this location? If all the answers are very different, then maybe it's a common place that people were at when they did it. So maybe it was, like in some places, it's the library. Well, they had a computer available for it, so we could understand that. But if you see 10, and they're all kind of the same response, and many of using like all capital letters to tell you what they think, then we can say, okay, well, it looks like these are all the same person. So we can kind of
But is there a way to really differentiate that?
Well, yeah, we would just pull those out.
Okay.
And just say that it's clear that we had a number of responses. We had in one, and we don't really get this very often, honestly. Very rarely. We did have one survey that we did within the last 2 years where we got kind of like a bot had gotten into the survey. It's the only thing we could think of, and there were a number of just nonsensical answers to some of the questions. So once we were able to look and see where the IP addresses were, we just pulled all of those out because they weren't right.
Okay.
But like I said, it doesn't happen very often. which is good.
That's all for now.
So would you use a QR code, for instance, on the website, the township website, to direct
We could do
people
that.
to?
We could have it, you could have it posted on a flyer outside. You could have it out at the playground, like, hey, as long as you're standing here, maybe take the survey. Where people could just click on it with their phones, and it's a mobile-friendly kind of survey. And if we do it for specific, shorter questions, people aren't going to be standing out there on their phones for 20 minutes trying to figure out how to answer all the survey questions.
Okay.
So that would be, I think, something else that would be useful too. And then maybe having it different places around the community. Maybe there's, a shop owner, a restaurant owner that would be willing to put up a flyer and get, they get a lot of the older crowd comes in for coffee. Let's get their input. There's another place where all the kids hang out because they've got sports and stuff. Let's put one there just to try to be a little bit more strategic about spreading it out. Would be really good.
Yeah, for me, I'd like to see a communications plan developed for how to execute this. You mentioned this coming in waves, and I like that approach. I think that gives you the best opportunity to gain the most amount of data and feedback. But it'd be interesting to see what those waves include then, and at what stages and timeframes that would be ideal. And there's lots of digital spaces out there. It's a buffet of digital environments to get this out, and frankly, we probably have to just do our best to get it out there to all of them. And each one has a slightly different method to their madness, and so one might be verbiage driven, the other graphics driven. So I think that would be important for us in this instance. One challenge for our community is that we don't have like a traditional downtown business district, right? We have a very transient style of business district. And I would gather that most people that live in our community might get surprised at where the boundaries of our community even exist and lie. And so with saying that out loud, I wonder if in a survey like this, if it's helpful to have some of those maps and all out there, like that clearly define where the framework of our community is at. And so those are a couple of thoughts or recommendations.
Yeah, and those are things that we talked about during the last planning process too. The idea of people not necessarily knowing, like, I'm a Genoa Township resident, but maybe more of like, well, my kids go to school in Howell, or my kids go to school in Brighton, I'm part of the Brighton community, I'm part of the Howell community. And that was kind of one of the things that we talked about with this campus with the park, was making it an identifiable place, center of the community. So that's an interesting thing. I interrupted you.
Yeah,
Something else.
you're good. I'd like to see a goal too. What would the community engagement goal be? What percentage would be a win? Does that make sense? So that we know what success looks like and can objectively measure that, and then kind of track it through those waves. Therefore, we know that if it's not trending towards the goal, then we maybe need to try some new things as that wave, so you can come back to those communications plans to understand if you're hitting your objective goals or not. And so, for a community of, last I checked, is like 21,000 people, households probably 5,000 or so. It'd be interesting to know what an objective outcome of how many we should be able to attain in that would be. And I think to your...
Statistically significant.
What's that?
Statistically significant.
Yeah, something to know what success is, so that I think on behalf of the township board and us, that we would be able to like understand where to put efforts then as that process moves along.
That is definitely a harder nut to crack.
Yeah.
Because what is the number? What if we say it's 10%? Is someone going to come up to you and say, well, why didn't you pick 15%?
Well,
Or if we said 15%.
I think to
well, why
Mary
didn't
Ann's
you pick
point though,
15%?
what has it been for you? You ran this process.
Yeah.
Right, so we're hiring you to do this. What has it been in the past for communities like ours? And I think with that information and data, then it helps us understand or get a benchmark or a baseline of success, of engagement.
And I I think quantifying it is hard to set, like, here's the number we want to hit.
Or a percentage. In my opinion, it might be shockingly low, frankly.
Very much so.
Like, it might be
10%.
actually, no, I was thinking 1.
That's what I was thinking.
Believe it or not, that you should expect to get that level of engagement. And just thinking about the numbers, 1% would be 2,000, or would be 200 people at something that's in person, right? So yeah, that's all. But I think it's still good, regardless of what the percentage is. I think it's still good to know what these objective outcomes can be, not just for this process, but this is something we revisit then 5, 10, 15 years down the road again. And that allows us to understand where our community lies in engagement and work on that.
I know what you're saying. It's just, it is hard. What we typically say is there's no magic number for response rate, but if we're developing a communication strategy that offers different tools to different age groups through different methods.
Yeah.
In person, online.
Maybe to clarify a little bit, when I'm thinking about this number, I'm not thinking about it in holding your firm accountable. I'm thinking about it in holding us accountable.
Yeah.
I don't see it as your thing to get out into our community.
Right.
I see it as our responsibility to get it out into our community. So I actually want to know it from a standpoint of like self-accountability and accountability for us. I don't know if that clarifies it, but I sense maybe that was a struggle for you in that.
It is, because then it all depends on who, I mean, you can develop all the surveys you want and come up with all the techniques and tools, but we can't make people participate.
Exactly, you don't control
Do we get a
people.
distribution on where, because we talked about the diversity of the township people, whether the majority of the responses are coming from the Howell side of the township versus the Brighton side of the township, or those who,
Yeah, I mean, we
you know,
can try to break that down.
because I think that's important, because people respond.
Even if somehow you
I
put
just
on
wanna
the
go-
map and you click on where do you live, if there's the capability of
Because it is,
pinpoint.
believe it or not, there is two different mindsets in this
Oh,
township
yeah, and we
between
talked about
the
that
Brighton
last time,
side
too.
and
It goes by
Houghton.
mailing.
What?
People go by their mailing address.
Yeah.
I live in
And
Brighton
school
because they have a
district. I mean, we've got
button.
4 school districts in
Yeah,
general.
Well, yeah, even in Oak Point, there's people with Howell addresses that go to Brighton schools,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I just think that in the absence of a goal, we'll subjectively understand or create an understanding of what success is individually. And so, that's my thought.
And can't we compare it to when we had the information, know what our response rate was from
Yeah.
2 years
Before.
ago?
Yeah.
So that's one metric, and then I'm sure that with all of these that you do, you can come up with probably the average response rate, or a range of, the low and the high, even just something to get an idea of, how we compare to other communities. I mean, that might even be a better way to look at it. is-
Well,
and that-
and what kind of progress we're making too, because
Right.
if you've got a so-called goal to reach and you're not there, things aren't going out as well as you think they are.
And then this might be hokey, but most industries out there, to get people to fill out a survey, offer some sort of
freebie.
freebie on the other side of it, right? And so my Culver's guy tells me his name, and I can get a free ice cream, and it is my motivator, frankly.
We have done that,
Okay, yeah.
and yes, we have gotten good response from doing it.
Okay.
If you would like, because you could do it in a way
Free
where
taxes,
you say,
right?
and
Is that-
because some people don't want to be,
No.
they want to be anonymous
Yeah.
in their surveys, which is
Yep.
totally fine. You just say this is completely anonymous. If you would like to be entered in our raffle and then you could have a list of, we've called them engagement rewards in the past, to get people to. And we've asked the community to, restaurants to give us couple of gift cards and.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get some donations from restaurants and just business. Roto 360.
Jill, there was a mention of the public forums like that they're having currently, where they're having an open house just to invite the general public. How do you get a sense on that? Do they fill out, do they give people the survey that you're sending out or the bar scan that you're sending out to fill in so that you have a feedback or an accounting of what their input is? Because other than just talking to people, how are you going to get a consensus of what people are interested in?
Yeah, I think, well, it depends on which opportunity we're talking about. If we're going to really focus on, the survey and strategies around that, then we can decide what we want the open house to be focused on. Do we want to have that just be another way of asking the same questions? Just now we've got people in person, so this is another way of getting that from them. We could do that. Or if it's something specific that you want to hear from people, then we can invite people in on a specific topic. Those are kind of, we kind of leave them a little bit open at the beginning of the process because we want to know, we don't want to, we've done it before where we've gotten to in fact, we did one in the Village of Milford where we had so many responses to the survey that our open house, which was sort of intended to be more visioning, we were like, we don't need to do this anymore, so we did something different. Because we heard everything from the community. We had a really good response right there.
What do you think drove that?
It's a really small, tight-knit community. It's a village. So, it's smaller population, very concentrated, very identifiable, center community.
And was this for master plan?
What's that?
Is this for master plan?
Yeah, for the master plan.
And what was the hot topic of
walkability was one of their big things that they really like. But we were hearing that maybe there were some opportunities to improve that. People really liked downtown, supporting downtown. It was actually a very positive survey. There really weren't any issues that people were very, upset
supportive
about. Or,
yep.
Usually you'd get, when you have a really good response, it's because people are upset about something. And they want to use this opportunity to tell you what it is. And that really wasn't the case there. So.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I just want to acknowledge, I recall all the hard works and efforts of your firm a few years ago, and I'm very appreciative of it, and personally very proud of the master plan that came forth out of that. I also think it is interesting, or with the potential that the temperature of a few things in our community has changed. I do think it's an okay practice to re-review and understand where that's at. And so getting feedback, community at large, that's how we are informed on making decisions and choices. That's what we did a few years ago, and move forward with off that feedback. And I think it'll be both interesting and enlightening to see how this feedback comes back similar or different. And either way, our commitment is to continue to listen to that and move forward. So.
Anyone else? At this point, I'd like to make a call to the public. We do have folks out there who'd like to step up and talk about this item.
You get into it? Yeah. All right. Well, I'm just saying this for Jill's edification. Hello again.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Please state your name and your address.
We're on TV.
Okay. For everybody else. Jeff DeHanens, 5494 Sharp Drive. Hell, right across, right around the corner. What's different, obviously, is the group very concerned about Latson Road. So you're going to get way more feedback than you've gotten previously. Clearly. You're going to get through next door. You're going to get those folks that'll be engaged too. I think the challenge, though, is getting folks that aren't particularly concerned about just Latson. How do you get their input about Grand River? How do you get their input about Crooked Lake Road? How do you get their input about Brighton and Chalice? I don't know that you do. I mean, I think I'm equally as proud of the master plan that we came up with last time. It was a great exercise. And the people that were involved, that's part of that plan. Now we're kind of throwing out what was that and said, your opinion from who vested time doesn't matter, but I get the temperature's changed. It has. So my point is just simply, I think there's going to be a lot of feedback this time, and there'll be a lot more people very concerned and concentrated on a particular area. And there'll be more than the 180 people that participated last time. So, cool.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hi, Melanie Johnson, 3990 Chilson. No, I want to get more people involved, because I feel you, because I have friends and a husband, and they never show up. So it's like, for me, I'm a little more motivated. Even my friends that live out of the way, not in center of Genoa, but there's been a lot of conversations since 2020. I think the survey might have gone out in 2021. And then I was at the Livingston County Master Plan meeting, and they opened their meeting by saying, we had a great response to our survey. We had over 1,000 people respond. Well, first of all, I had never heard that Livingston County was doing a survey. And secondly, that's what they're gonna sell as good. So I like the expectations low, because you never know what someone's gonna actually respond. Like, I don't feel like getting in that dirty bag of discussion on LATs, and I'm tired of it because it's all over social media. So no, also, could we maybe even survey previous, like this could be informal, you could have conversations with, is it EDC? Economic Development Council? Because they were I can't remember if it was the Planning Commission or the board, but they wanted to get feedback from them about growth patterns, demand for business spaces, and what buildings might be empty or available. Just as an aside, like, here's a professional opinion for somebody who actually studies our economic area, that could be a good place to start. I mean, I don't know, if somebody was going to reach out to them, I think it might have been the board. But thank you for your time.
Hi again, Deborah Beatty, 3109 Pineview Trail. I just wanted to say that Kevin, who has started the discussion about all of this, the supervisor, he has a number in mind. He would like to hear from 2,000 residents. Now, you know, we're hoping we get more, but that is the number that would make him feel comfortable. I think I'm stating that exactly how he said it. And also, in the last board meeting, we've talked about the new Genoa Township app and what we can include on that. So that should be coming pretty soon, I think. And that would be another place to gather more information from people. And that's all.
All right. Seeing no one else to come up, I'm going to close the call to the public and bring it back up front.
Yeah, I just, Jill, I don't know if there's a way we can get an idea of, you know, where the voices are coming from. Like, you know, I think Jeff was alluding to of, you know, can we get an idea if we have 80% of the people that are commenting are really from the area that's been opposing this section, which there's nothing wrong with that, of course. But I don't know if there's ways that we can, you know, from my perspective, I have a real disconnect with everything I've been listening to for the last 2 years. And I don't know if there's a way that we can craft questions to try and better really understand, because all I hear is what they don't want, but I don't hear what they do want. And so, you know, when I look at the original development as approved, not as, you know, trying to be amended, which we have denied, because we don't agree with some of the changes they wanted to make that weren't part of the original proposal. But the original proposal, for me, offered a really great balance of a research campus that minimized a lot of traffic, walking trails, bike trails, scenery, a boulevard. I mean, all of the things that I picture, you know, a nice cute little town having or area having, and minimizing traffic to the school system, because a research and development area doesn't have near the traffic, daily traffic, as a 700 unit condo complex that can fit on that area. A 700-unit complex, I mean, if everyone's worried about the schools, that's probably the last thing we want, right? And so, you know, all I hear is about they don't want big development, but they don't say what they do want. And that's, to me, the missing link. You know, I mean, I've got somebody complaining about traffic and big development, and somebody commented, why don't we put a retail center of multiple restaurants where we can put dumpsters with rats, and I mean, it's a total disconnect for me. And I think part of it is just the lack of education of master planning and an understanding of the importance of that balance in a community, and you know, trying to educate the public of that. But if there's a way we could figure out, you know, those who are opposing this big development, industry development, okay, what do you want?
Well, we
Because
could
I
make
know
this place.
I live close by, and I don't want 700 condos there. I don't even want 500 homes. I'm worried about the local school system. You want to talk about traffic? Let's talk about traffic now. You know, and so I can't figure out like what would work well there. You know, besides maybe a church and another school, right? Which I'm not sure we're ready for. You know, and so that's my big disconnect. Is I talk to those people who are opposed to it, but they can't tell me what they want. They just tell me what they don't want. You know, and
That is to the nature of what we do.
of course, and you know, the developer has the right to develop his property, and we have to find that balance in everybody's best interest. And so, I don't know if there's a way, you know, I'm sure you've heard this, but I'm going to say it anyway. But I think that's what we're really struggling with, you know, and trying to get to the bottom of that somehow would be extremely helpful, at least for me.
Right. And you're right, I think that there's a large education component, and it's not just once every couple of years we talk about the master plan and what it is and why we do it. It's at every meeting you relate something back to the master plan. I was just in a meeting last week where we talked about, you know, the master plan can lay out the vision for the community and what people say they want, what the planning commission envisions, understanding all the things that you understand. But then most of the land in the community is privately held. So we rely on private property owners to build out our vision of the future. And sometimes we can be very persuasive, and we can really demonstrate the value in our vision for the property owner. And, you know, there's, I think, a level of being proactive about really the kinds of things that you want, or not. You are more open to, you know, there's a more hands-off approach where, you know, we've got a palette, a menu of things that can be done here. Here's a few for parameters that we put on development. And so there's kind of that range. But I think talking about it within the framework of overall from this community, what do we want? There are many people, and not just here, so I don't want anyone who would hear this to think that I'm saying this about anybody specific, because it's everywhere. People don't like things to be different than how they are today. You've heard this. I moved here because of this. I don't want to see anything else. And of course, we understand that makes sense. But it's part of our job to help people understand that this community is going to evolve, just like it has evolved over the last 50 years. It looks very different today than it did 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It will look very different probably in another 20 or 30 years. But how do we want to shape that? That kind of gets to your question. What do we want to see? Like, we know we can't stand still. We know that we can't do nothing, and we know that we have to let people who own land develop it in some way. It doesn't mean that they can do whatever they want, but what makes sense for us in our community and what moves us further towards this vision that we see. You know, that's a lot to put in a survey question. So those are things where you really need to have time to visit with people and talk about those things. Maybe there are, you know, one of the things that we, I think, talked about in the previous scope was, you know, an idea of meeting toolkits where maybe we're facilitating or giving people some information so that they can facilitate a meeting on their own. And maybe that could help get at, you know, in different parts of the community, we're hearing from different people.
Because we can't just listen to that corner. I mean, we have an obligation to the entire community.
Right.
You know, to listen to the entire community,
Yep.
and not just a subset. I mean, we have to listen to that subset, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But we have to take the entire community into consideration.
Exactly. And not just today, but be thinking about
Correct.
the future, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now. What do people need and want then? Who are the people that aren't even here yet? What will they want and need?
Correct. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm just curious, what information would be helpful for the township, from us, as you guys move forward?
I think you gave it.
Okay.
They were looking for what you would like out of, you know, the public engagement. And I have about 5 things listed. So they were looking for your feedback and what you would like to see from public engagement. One of the things that the new supervisor has been doing is the town hall meetings, which has, you know, he's had one, and he's having one this Wednesday, so for anybody watching, they know it starts at 6.
Do
And I think that's been a great thing.
Are they videoing those? I
don't
didn't
know
think
if
that they were.
They are not televised.
Yeah.
No, they're
Yes.
not. She's saying watching now.
Yeah, the
Oh,
people that are watching
sorry,
now,
okay.
at least they'll know.
Yes.
But those are not televised. But to come, I mean, it's just, come on in, speak, you know, what are your thoughts? And it's good feedback. One of those things has been helping, but it's really hard for master plan. I mean, we had 11 meetings on this past master plan update. And we got a small response, you know, I think it was, what was the response for the survey and all that stuff in there, but we had 11 meetings. So that's a hard part,
I think,
to try to get people here.
to Glynis's point, a lot of people don't even understand the process. What I was really amazed at when we did the first master plan, what is it, 40% of our township is 5 acres or more?
Yeah.
That's significant. And I think it would be a great idea if you had, a vision board, and you just highlighted those areas that were that percentage, to say, here, these people are property owners, this is where they're located, they all own properties that in the future will probably not be like this anymore. What do you envision as part of our community in these spaces? Because that's a significant amount. And the more you hear people saying, I moved here because I liked it and I don't want to see change, that's 40% is a big amount of property that if nobody changed it, there probably would be a lot of people that were happy, but property owners have land rights. And that might be a way to look at it for people to kind of go, I had no idea, and if something's going to happen, this is what I could envision possibly being here.
Never mind, I'm thinking right now. You said vision board, and all of a sudden I had this
Vision board going, yes.
Well, we need,
Do you have?
Yes, I have a lot of things.
By more than what you needed?
Probably. I think we went probably a different direction on the engagement, but that's good. I think.
I was worried about that.
Yeah, no, that's okay though. Well, I mean, we want it to be, like I said, I will tell you that there is nothing sadder than the hours and hours and hours that our team will put into preparing materials for a community open house. Now, that didn't happen here, and having 3 people show up. So we don't want to do work that nobody engages with. Like, we're very excited when we see people participating. And that's a measure of success for us too. Like, how are we designing, just like I said, with like designing the surveys in shorter spurts. So they go, oh, that's cool. Like, let's try that. Let's try and get more people to participate that way. So it's kind of like, I really like the challenge of trying to come up with these new things. And so, I think I'll take this back and we'll talk more about strategic, because I don't want to, blow up the budget, or, we want to do things that are efficient, fiscally and time-wise. We don't need to spend a whole year collecting community input. We want to do that in a short timeline too.
But I think we also want to make sure that, seeing how the master plan was just updated.
Right.
That if we're gonna do it, we gotta make it worth the while.
Right.
We want to do the whole community, so this is when we should try to get more of the public input.
Right.
As much as we can, seeing how we just did this.
Right, and so maybe we break those down into, like, here were the main points from the last master plan. Like, we're not doing this to, like, throw out the whole thing.
Right.
Here's the things that were envisioned in our document from a couple years ago. Maybe providing some opportunity for people to engage and feedback on those things. Because I think there's a lot of stuff in there that people probably will really like, that makes sense. So, and maybe it starts more with like an educational component too.
Amy, do we need a motion to close this off?
No. It was just discussion.
All right. Do we want to move on to staff report?
Yep.
We can?
Thanks, Jill.
Thank
you.
Yeah, thank you, Jill.
Do you think you have everything that you need on that?
No, I'm just gonna go.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you
Just typing my notes
needed
and-
anything else on that one. We only have one item, well, 2 items for next month. We will have, hopefully if I can get it done, we'll have Article 13 is our environmental regulations. So we are looking at having, I have to update our fuel storage ordinance, which I know we've had some issues with. And we are also looking at tree preservation. And I just added oak wilt into that. We do have an oak wilt resolution, but I looked at the state of Michigan during the meeting and regarding oak wilt. The state of Michigan says they recommend not pruning or cutting April 15th through July 15th. But they don't make it, I think you said arborists can lose their license for it, but unfortunately that's just the state's recommendation. So I have to see how I can put anything in our ordinance about that.
Can't we just refer to the state?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just refer to the state.
Because that's going to change all the
That's-
time,
yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
oak wilt right now, and 5 years from now, it's going to be another
That's
species.
true, following the state's recommendations. And the other item that is going to be coming forth is going to be 3600 Grand River, which for long-timers would know it as the old Dick's Sports Building. It's right next to
Long and
Speedway.
narrow.
Oh, okay.
They are looking at redeveloping that site.
It's still office?
It will not be office. They are looking at, I believe, potentially 3 buildings. One in the back, 2 up front.
Sounds right.
They're looking at having
Fast food restaurant.
a drive-through, and they're looking at, I believe, having a credit union, and then potentially Goodwill drop-off, just some ideas that we've heard. But they will be coming forth on the April 14th meeting also.
Anything
That's
else?
all that I have.
All right, approval of the February 10th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Approval is submitted.
All right.
I'd like to-
Wow. Bonus for Patty.
All those in favor, or you have to have support, right? Make a motion. All those in
Support.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, we move on to member discussion.
Who's planning to go to the meeting tomorrow night so we don't have,
Well, hopefully it's Wednesday night.
Wednesday night, excuse me.
I can go between 6 and 7, but is it up to 3 at one time
And
of
we have
planning
a
commission?
Why is that? I'm
Because you
sorry.
can't have a
Yeah,
quorum.
can't have a quorum.
Oh, that's why.
The quorum at an open meeting.
That's the reason I haven't
Of all
had you,
things, I
that's
thought
the reason I
that's
haven't
not one of
invited
them.
you all
And
out
I
for
remember
dinner.
reading, I'm like, I remember reading about that.
We can't even all
That's
go
the
out to
only
lunch.
reason, right?
So, like, so that we could just like decide and vote on something?
It's the discussion. You're discussing planning items, or you're just,
Yeah.
you can't be doing that as a
Interesting.
quorum.
So who is planning to go?
I don't have to.
Chris was going,
I have Bill going.
Bill was going, that's two.
Is Bill on township or is he gonna be a planning?
He's both, right?
He's
Yes.
considered both.
Yeah, okay. So I'm there from 6 to 7. I don't know when you're there, Chris.
Or how long it's gonna be.
The whole time.
6 to 8, is that
I
the?
think it said 6 to 8.
Okay, all right.
So if someone wants to come at 7, take
Well-
the spot, we'll high five.
Okay.
But minutes will be
Second.
taken, right?
Yeah.
Minutes will be taken. So there
Nope,
won't be any notes?
nope.
Nope.
They'll just take notes. I literally answered more than half the questions last time.
Yes, you did.
Thank you, Jeff.
Why was something done this way? How come we do these things? So,
And
it was
Kelly-
probably, if I had to guess, 44, 50 people. It was all these chairs.
Okay.
And then people just started trickling out.
Well, that's a bummer that we don't take notes for those people who can't attend, would like to know what was
I would be
discussed and
willing
could
to
get
bet
answers
we'll
to
have
those questions.
Less people this time because why I came to the first one, why would I come to the next one? What's different?
The leadership was taking notes.
Yeah.
They were taking notes, but they just, I mean, it was discussion items. So,
Okay.
I mean, we can give you a synopsis of it if you would like.
It's not for me so much as the other 100 people who can't attend because they have to work or they have to take their kid to preschool or dance or something, who would like to attend and would get value out of knowing some of those answers.
So there would be a couple more after this.
You know?
I think they're planning on having them quarterly, maybe? Is that right? Or
That's
every
fine.
6 weeks or something?
I'm not sure what the plan is
Yeah.
on those.
Okay.
Okay.
So we can discuss that. I mean, it's a good thing to discuss. The township supervisor is the one who is leading them. So I will discuss it, we can discuss it on Wednesday when we're all together.
Yeah, even like a general Q&A that comes out of them. I mean, even for me, I'd be curious to know what the residents are asking. I can't come because we have 3.
Right.
So I would be curious to know, like,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
The concern I hear, or at least I'm perceiving, is that it diminishes the role of the call to the public in any of our meetings. Planning Commission or Township Board.
by taking notes.
No, but by just having, there's already a mechanism in place at all of our meetings to accommodate questions
Oh.
that exist in our community. So that happens at minimum 4 times a month between 2 Township Board meetings, ZBA meeting, Planning Commission meeting.
Correct.
All right.
We'll discuss it.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none? Go home.
Daughter's leaving. My daughter comes
Use
here
your
from.
microphone.
My concern is
Hold on 1 second, everybody.
that are part of
Minutes
these
were included
or
from the Board of Trustees
yeah.
meetings.